Oh, why, hello, and welcome back to the O Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, CW. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to hit that bell on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast on any and all platforms. That's where we are. We're everywhere. Or head over to owrestling.com, ohwrestling.com, for all your 10-minute wrestling talk needs. Today, we're talking about Ivar, the big man. I had an idea in my head, and I was like, man, this would be so cool if it actually existed. And I said, wait a minute. I have a podcast where I talk about wrestling, so why don't I make an episode about that? Now, if you listened to my last episode, I said every episode from then until the Royal Rumble will be about the Royal Rumble. Well, I lied. Today is going to be about Ivar because I have to get this out. I have to get it down on digital paper. And who knows? Maybe it'll be 10 minutes. Maybe it'll be a little longer. I don't know yet, but let's see how fast I can get my idea out. So enough rambling. Let's get to it. Ivar has been killing it since Erik was injured and put on injury reserve. I believe he's coming back later this year, sometime in the fall. But until then, Ivar is running solo dolo with Valhalla as his right-hand lady. And every time he shows up on Raw, he puts on a magnificent showing. Can we all agree on that? When that big man hits the ring, he makes magic. They're very agile, enormous, meaty men in WWE these days. Bronson Reed, Otis, Ivar, they all have incredible, prowess and strength, but they also make like crazy moves. And Ivar in particular does some of the best moves. This past Raw, he wrestled Otis, and he did a springboard off the second rope to Otis. Otis caught him in midair and then slammed him. It was a magnificent showing, and it actually kind of sparked this idea I had. So I do not like the name Viking Raiders. I don't like the gimmick either, because I am all about kayfabe. I'm all about suspension of disbelief. But there's something about Vikings that doesn't sit well with me. Now, if you've listened to any of the episodes, you know I'm an Undertaker fan or a Kane fan. So where's that, duality, right? Well, nothing about the Undertaker or Kane is real. Nothing about them is remotely based in reality. Vikings are a real thing, or were a real thing. So it's hard for me to disconnect. It's hard for me to disconnect when I see them come out and call themselves the Viking Raiders. And I'm like, you're totally not. Even though they kind of are. Like, I've seen their behind the scenes stuff, and they're into the heritage and they're into the culture. I get it. As wrestling gimmicks, I don't know. It just doesn't jive. But the good thing about it is they play it up really well, and they kind of lean into it enough where you kind of go, okay, whatever. And they're fantastic performers, Ivar in particular. So here was my idea. Ivar has some time between now and when Erik comes back. He has great momentum, and they have to kind of capitalize on this momentum. But until Erik comes back, he's kind of in a holding pattern. He's just putting on great matches, but he can't really go anywhere. So I was thinking, what if we gave Ivar a sort of solo run outside of Erik? He can come back to that tag team in a bit, but it's called The Trials of Ivar. Now, what does that mean? So in a backstage vignette, you'll have Valhalla, confronting Ivar and saying, the gods spoke to me, and they told me that before you can, move on to your next challenge or whatever, you have to go through these trials to prove your worth, to prove your strength, to prove you're truly a Viking Raider. Let's just call it that. I haven't written it down. And she's saying you must strip yourself bare of all your adornments and go out and face these challenges. And with every challenge, you will gain, something new. I'm paraphrasing my own idea. But essentially, it's like she'll say, all right, all this Viking stuff you're going to get rid of, and we're going to We're going to strip you back to basics. And then you're going to go and have to complete these trials within WWE. And with every win, you gain a piece of your gear back, a piece of your armor back. And with every loss, you have to you can't lose, basically. If he loses, he has to go back and retry the challenge, potentially have, something added on to the challenge. But the core of the idea is strip him down to what is essentially, what motivates a Viking, right? It's to pillage, it's to beat down his enemies, to claim areas, right? And for him, it's something less Viking-y and more along the lines of The Witcher. And we kind of move him into this monster hunter kind of thing, where he's going after the biggest, the baddest dudes on the roster to prove his strength, to prove his worth, to prove he's not afraid of something, right? Like, so to shove him in a cage and have him fight Braun Strowman, or put him in a ladder match against Bronson Reed, and have these, 6 or 9 or 12 trials that he has to go through. And with every win, he gains a very specific, ornate piece of ring gear, right? So you strip him down, he's very bare bones, but then he has like a wolf pelt or something on him to signify like he's on the hunt. And then let's say he goes out there and he wrestles Otis in a singles match on Raw, and he wins, and Valhalla comes out and she presents him with this new piece of gear. Maybe it's like a wrist guard or something, and it's depicting his win over Otis. Maybe it's like an O or the word Otis written in whatever Viking language is. I'm not sure what it is, but have it, say Otis, and then have it crossed out, right? Something to signify a win. And then let's say he's then scheduled to wrestle Bronson Reed again, and he loses. Then you can start building the story where he's constantly trying to improve himself to get back to Bronson Reed to defeat him so that he can continue on this trials, right? So basically we're building Ivar a storyline outside of like Championship Gold or something personal that fans can get behind, something that Ivar can get behind, and you can follow the ups and downs of his trials. So it becomes this constant thing where every, pay-per-view, maybe he has his trials match, right? And it could be, like I said, it could be a ladder match against someone like Kofi Kingston, right? And he's challenging, maybe he begins challenging wrestlers to their best match, right? And he needs to defeat them to not only get his ring gear back, but prove himself to the Viking gods. And this goes on for, quite a while, however long it takes for him to kind of establish himself in the eyes of the gods. And as the fans follow along, and as people get more invested, they see him change. They see his ring gear change. They see his demeanor change, his strength, maybe his moveset morphs from the first time he does it to the last time. With every loss, he like changes a move, or he changes the way he does certain things, or maybe he becomes more cat-like, or I'm just making crap up at this point, but he begins to improve himself and become a better, not necessarily a better, he's already a fantastic wrestler, but he becomes, a more refined version of Ivar. Maybe he gets a name change where he's like Ivar the Cold, he comes out, he can keep the kind of Viking gimmick, but then maybe there's like Frost that comes out, and because he's become this cold hunter of men, right? And as he goes through these trials, and he gets bigger and better, stronger, and he finishes the trials, and Valhalla presents him with the final piece of ring gear. Maybe it's like a headdress or something, and he's like, you finally completed your trials, and now it is time for you to plunder. And then he goes on the hunt for WWE Gold. Look at that. We made it in 10 minutes. That's my idea for Ivar the Cold / the Trials of Ivar. Let me know in the comments what you think of my Ivar booking. Let's get this man booked to the moon. I want to follow that story. Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you guys next time, and don't you ever forget.
I'm your friend, but if I ever see you in the ring, I can beat you. Don't you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah.